What's going on, hustlers? Welcome back to the channel. Now, if you've ever been confused by DLA solicitations or what the process actually looks like of going through a solicitation on dibs and what all the jargon and technical terms mean, then this is the video for you. In today's coaching session, Day is going to be breaking down everything inside of a $75,000 solicitation and what you need to be looking out for in order to increase your chances of actually winning the contract. Likewise, what rookie mistakes you need to be avoiding that could hinder your chances before even getting started. And as always, if you find this content useful, then please consider subscribing as it really helps the channel, and let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Let's get into it.
All right, sweet. So could I get like a yes or like a 1 or a thumbs up or something in the chat from somebody if you guys can see my screen? Okay, sweet. So you guys can see my screen. Let me zoom in here a little bit. All right, so we're going over a fairly recent contract. As you can see here, this was awarded about 3 weeks ago to us, and this is just the 2 Lines Aerospace one. I can go over somebody else's contract in a future meeting or something if you guys want to. But yeah, so this is for, I believe, some wire harnesses. So a little bit different than solicitations, right? So if you notice on the top, the first box, like it's not even numbered. It's just like the very first box that you see. This says order for supplies or services. Whereas with the solicitation, it says request for quote, right? Request for quote because they're soliciting firms like us. They're soliciting firms like us to be able to submit information, provide them information to submit bids, right? So the main thing that we're going to do today is like basically going over the differences between contracts and solicitations. So the first one is this says orders for supplies or services rather than request for a quote. Then we come down here to box 1, and this is contract / purchase order / agreement number, right? So these 3 things, they all basically mean the same thing, but a lot of times, a lot of people get confused when they're like, oh, the contract number, when they're talking about solicitations. Big no-no, big no-no. A solicitation, remember, the government DLA is soliciting companies to bid on the contracts, right? Whereas contracts, they're legally binding agreements between you and the company, or between you and DLA. So it's a legally binding agreement from DLA saying, hey, we are going to purchase X amount of material from you at this price point, and you're going to deliver it within this time frame, kind of thing, right? So be very careful when you're talking to somebody else, whether that be a contracting officer or somebody you're willing to partner with, or a distributor or something, when you say contract number versus solicitation, right? Box number 2, delivery order / call number. What does this box mean, and why is it blank, right? So this box is in reference to IDIQs or ADICs. Yeah. So an IDIQ is indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity contract, otherwise known as an AIDC, automated indefinite delivery contract. These kinds of contracts are the ones that you bid on, right? And let's say the duration is for 1 year, and DLA says at a minimum we're gonna purchase, I don't know, let's say I have a phone stand charger right here, right? So DLA says at a minimum we're gonna buy at least 20 of those phone stand chargers, but over the course of a year we could purchase 1,000 of them, right? And that happens like that. You see those contracts all the time, right? So when you get a contract like that, right, DLA is saying, okay, there's a minimum that we're going to place, and here's the initial order, right? So if they're going to place if they're going to order 1,000 over the course of a year, right, up front, they might ask you for 50, right? And then they're going to place multiple orders between, let's say you get it January 1st of 2024. They're going to place multiple orders from January 1st, 2024 to January 1st, 2025, right? So they might place, I don't know, 20 orders, right, of 50 each. So this box right here, the delivery order number, this tells you like the specific purchase order, or basically it's a way to identify the more specific purchase order that DLA is using as they're placing orders or they're making purchases against the big contract, right? So the big contract is 1,000 units. The delivery order number tells you like how many purchases they've made against those 1,000 units. So this box will have something here if it's an IDC, right? So this is one of the best ways that you can tell if you're looking at an IDC, if you maybe won an IDC without knowing that you bid on one, right? Then date of order, when it was awarded, purchase request number. Oh, and then here you've got priority. So DOC or Delta Oscar dash Charlie 9. So this basically tells you how quickly DLA needs something from you, right? Now, I don't remember off the top of my head what the different priorities are. However, I do have a YouTube video where I did explain this in depth. I believe it's revealing everything that the government told me part one when I came back from the DLA Land and Maritime seminar, and it talks about the different codes, right? So I know DO dash Charlie 9, that's like standard priority, not a big deal, right? But if you see a solicitation that says DO Charlie 0, right, that means it could be a very high priority, right? So if it's a high priority, that means if you submit your bid, it could be one of those instances where you submit it and then you win it the same day. Like I've had stuff that I bid on at 7 a.m. and then at 7 p.m. when I'm eating dinner with my family, DLA awards it kind of thing, right? So looking in the priority box on solicitations and contracts, it's a really good way to figure out, how urgently does DLA need something? And obviously, the more urgently they need something, the quicker they're going to place that purchase order and administer those tax dollars for you, right? Then here we come down, issued by, very similar to solicitations, DLA Aviation ASC Commodities Division, Strathmore Road, Richmond, Virginia. And then this is kind of important. This is kind of important. And if you notice here, it says administered by, and then in parentheses, it says if other than 6. What does this mean, if other than 6? This means that if the contract was administered by somebody other than DLA Aviation, right, then there could be additional inspections that are required. And this is a perfect example of that. So it says DCMA Southeast, and this is our DCMA office. DCMA stands for Defense Contract Management Agency. And then this is their address, McGuire Boulevard, Orlando, Florida. I've actually gone to visit them. Now, why is this even relevant to you, right? Anytime you see DCMA, your ears need to perk up. That's the feds. And obviously, yes, everybody that we deal with is the feds, but DCMA, they're completely independent of DLA. They will come to your door and do whatever they can ask you for whatever information they want, and you have to provide it to them readily available, right? Or they can suspend your operation. So DCMA is independent of DLA. They're basically like a check and balance to make sure that there's no fraudulent parts that are getting into the supply chain, making sure that nobody's cutting corners with their quality assurance, making sure that you're adhering to all of the requirements, like certification requirements in the solicitation, making sure you're getting all your testing reports and all that good stuff, right? So if if you see anything in this box, you need to like look really, really hard. And then you want to make sure that it's not DCMA. And then if it is DCMA, you need to make sure that you're on your P's and Q's in terms of like your paperwork and all that good stuff, right? And then we come here, and then we've got your delivery. This tells you destination versus other. Now, the reason why I'm touching on this again, even though we looked at it in the last meeting, is because something in a solicitation, right? The solicitation can say FOB destination before it's awarded, right? And you can tell DLA, hey, I'll bid on this, but I want you guys to pay the shipping, and you change it to FOB origin, right? So sometimes that stuff can change, right? Like the logistical components of a contract, that can change from the time it's a solicitation to the time it's a contract. So this is something very important that you wanna make sure and be like, hey, if I submitted a request for it to be FOB origin, meaning the government pays for the shipping, this is how you'll know if it was approved or not, right? Then box 9, that's us, 2 Lines Aerospace, Fort Lauderdale, Florida, cage code. You can look this up. And then here you've got the delivery days, so 275 days at date of order. So 275 days from June 25th, 2024. That's when DLA is expecting to receive it. Fun fact, you are considered on time, not if DLA has the material within 275 days, but if in WAF and BSM, you have the material ready to ship, right? So let's say 275 days from June 25th, if the material is not in DLA's hands, but you've gone into WAF, which is Wide Area Workflow, which is DLA's invoicing software, and you've said, hey, I'm ready to ship this. I'm ready to ship this, and I'm letting you guys know I'm ready to get paid on it, and I've already printed my labels. FedEx can come get it. You are legally considered on time, so you're not going to get docked with your SPURS score. And for those of you guys that don't know, your SPURS score is your Supplier Performance Risk System. Then you come here, and then this tells you what kind of like set asides this contract was marked under. Now, if you notice, it says it here in box 11 on the side right here, whereas on a solicitation, it usually, or not usually, it does say it right up here. So the location of like the set asides changes. And then here you have your discount terms, right? So we just do everything net 30. And then mail invoices to the address in block, and then submit invoices in accordance with Defense Federal Acquisition Regulation 252 period or 252.232-7003. Basically, this DFARS, this Defense Federal Acquisition Regulation, means submit your stuff with WAF, Wide Area Workflow. Don't be mailing your stuff in. Submit it with WAF, and you'll be good, right? Then ship to. Sometimes this will be filled out with the address. A lot of times, though, it's usually not. A lot of times you have to scroll down to section B of the contract to find the ship to address. Then here you can see who the payment is made by. So Defense Finance and Accounting Services, Columbus, Ohio. And you guys see these codes, right? So these codes are six character codes, right? So you see one here, you see one here, and you see one here, right? And then the cage code is only 5 digits, right? So what do these codes mean? These codes are Dodacs. So I wish I had, I'm going to write it in the chat so you guys can see how that's spelled. DODAAC. Or really, I guess I could do it in all caps. Dodac. Look in the chat so you can see like what I mean, right? So this is an acronym. What does this acronym mean? It means Department of Defense Activity Address Code. Why is this relevant to us? This is relevant to us when we start doing market research, right? So when it comes time to really follow the money, right? And I'm gonna do like a whole in-depth training on this in the boot camp. When it really comes time to follow the money, like I'm talking about like deep dive, like separate yourself from the pack, like go from doing $10,000 a month to $100,000 a month, and you're doing that with your market research. You're going to do it based on your DODAC, right? And there are different kinds of DODAC. So here we have the financing DODAC, right? This is the Department of Defense Activity Address Code of the people that are paying for the stuff. Then this is the Department of Defense Activity Address Code that issued the contract. And then this is the Department of Defense Address Activity Code that administered the contract, right? So when you're doing your market research, you want to check and see, okay, you can click on contracts, right, for the item, like the product market that you're looking at, and then you can see, hey, what DODAC is financing this, right? So if it's a DODAC that you're familiar with, or let's say it's a DODAC that you've already done business with and you know they pay really quickly, then you can target that product market because you're like, okay, I know S Sierra Lima 4701, they pay quick, they pay on time, they pay well. Whereas if you're looking at stuff based on like who issued it, right? I know I only do business with DLA Aviation and then DLA Land and Maritime. And I know that the DODAC for who I do business with is SPE 4A6, right? So you can look and you can see, okay, is this a DODAC that I've already done business with? Is this a DODAC that issues a bunch of contracts? Do they issue a bunch of contracts for the items that I'm bidding on? Are they well organized, right? Are they underserved? Are they overstaffed? Are they super new, right? Like you want to correlate these Dodacs to your experiences that you have with them prior when you're doing market research. And then if you're a newcomer and you don't have any experience, you want to correlate these Dodacs to like how frequently you see them in FPDS, right? So if you see the same Dodac coming up over and over, in a certain product market, that might be a sign that you might want to pursue any solicitations that are being issued by that Dodac. So that was kind of just some like really higher level stuff right there. That was like a little nugget. Um, so then we scroll down here. And then this is a purchase order, and then here you can see when this was submitted. And then this is like our little we have individual quote numbers that we use internally for times that contracts are submitted from our partner company that we manage. So that's our internal quote number, which we'll go over how to create a quote number in the boot camp. And then you come down here, schedule of supplies services. It says C schedule. Anytime you see C schedule, it just means go down to section B. Then we've got the quantity, so it's 166 units and it's for $75,000, 717. So I don't want to give you guys like a ridiculously big one because typically the bigger the contract, the more hoops we have to jump through. But I wanted to give you guys like a decent sized one just so one, you can see it's possible, and then two, you can kind of like don't forget, like I'm still in the field. I'm still right here with you guys, like bidding on these contracts. So I wanted you guys to see that. Then you come down here, and then you have the contracting officer, Mary Munar at DLA.mil, right? Now, what's the difference between contracting officer and then the point of contact here? So the email that you see here, sometimes it could be the same as the contracting officer's information here. Sometimes it is the same, but sometimes it's different. And in an instance like this where it's different, right? And this just means that this means Roberto is the point of contact for DLA Aviation ASC Commodities Division. So he could give you some valuable information, but he might not give you all the information that you need specifically about your contract specifically, right? Anything that has to do with like submitting a PAR, which is a post-award request, which we'll talk about in the boot camp. Whenever you need to edit or alter a contract on the back end after it's already been awarded. Anytime you have questions about like where it's going or how they want it packaged or shipped, it's going to be here in box 24, right? And then box 25, here you go. You can see that nice amount. There you go. Sweet. And then the following DLA aviation notices are incorporated by reference. The full text of the notices, right? So these are pretty much DA or Dan's, but DLA aviation notices, and these basically talk about, making sure that you have everything in WAF. And then if you do need to repackage or relabel something because you shipped it to DLA incorrectly, here's the reference or the notice, I'm sorry, that you can find it at. And then like anytime you submit a bid and then it doesn't get accepted, it's a rejection of an award. And then there's a master solicitation list, which contains a whole bunch of information about like requirements that you have to adhere to for solicitations that you can find on DLA's website, but it's really not relevant. You can look at it if you want, if you have time to kill, but I'm not gonna lie to you, I've never looked at it. And then here, supplies or services. So we've got the NSN number. So if you guys remember from the last session, we talked about what NSN numbers are comprised of, right? And then you have the item's description, so it's a wiring harness. And then this has technical requirements, which again you can find in the DLA master list of technical and quality requirements. You can click this link and then you can look at the corresponding letter, but again, not really applicable. Now, this tells you CDI applies, which I just made a YouTube video about cybersecurity and what CDI really means. So go watch that. We only have about like 20 more minutes here, so I'm not going to go super in-depth into that. And then RP001, this means that you have to adhere with the packaging requirements for the contract. And then Removal of government identification from non-accepted supplies. So let's say you submit something, right? Or you send something to DLA and then it's not good. They send it back to you. You can't keep like the contract number labels on there, right? So hypothetically, if let's say we were to send these wiring harnesses back to the distributor, the manufacturer, and then they were to resell it again, you cannot leave the government label that has all that information on there on that item when you send it back to them. Don't do that. Big no-no. Then here, inspection and acceptance at origin, which we kind of already knew because we saw that this was administered by DCMA, right? So anytime you see DCMA, your ear should prick up. That's the feds. Typically, it's going to be an inspection origin anytime you see DCMA, right? And then this tells you non-tailored higher level quality requirements for manufacturers and non-manufacturers. What does this mean? This is ISO 9001. ISO 9001 is a quality assurance certification that you can get. You basically need to have quality assurance processes in place, and then you pay an assessor to come evaluate you and then certify that your processes are sound and you're meeting all these requirements. Now, a lot of times people think just because they're ISO certified, they're good to go. No, not true. Whenever you see this in a contract, higher level quality requirements, this means that anybody who touches the part from its entire lifespan, from the time it gets manufactured to the time it goes to the distributor, so on and so forth, has to be ISO certified. So the entire supply chain that the material moves through has to be ISO certified, right? And yeah, if you look here, it says for manufacturers and non-manufacturers, right? And then mill standard 130, November identification marking of U.S. military property. This has to do with your labeling, right? And then here we've got sampling method shall be in accordance with mill standard 1916. So basically, sampling literally just means that the government wants a sample of the material to be included, or we'll have to look to see specifically what they want further on in the contract, or they want a sampling report, right? So what a sampling report is the manufacturer will take a random sample of the batch of the material that they just manufactured, they'll put it through some tests, and then depending on how the material holds up throughout those tests, then they'll compile like a formal report, and they typically all follow the same format. So sampling reports, not hard to get. You just have to ask for them. Very rarely will they ever be free. More often than not, you're typically going to have to pay for a sampling report. So just keep that in mind when you're looking at solicitations, that if you see sampling as a requirement, it's probably going to eat into your profit margin just a tad. This talks about export control data questionnaire. So they actually offer training on export control data and basically how to realize what it is, how to make sure you're in compliance with all of the requirements. We talked about this last session, but basically if you're not exporting anything, if it's not going outside of the country, then it's fine. You don't have to worry about export control data. And then this blurb is always going to be here, right? Mercury or mercury containing compounds shall not intentionally be added to or come in direct contact with or any hardware supplies furnished under this contract. So as long as you're not shipping anything that has to do with mercury and you're not storing this in a warehouse that has anything to do with mercury, you're fine. Then we see that this is a critical application item, right? So you got to make sure that all your paperwork is high and tight. And then we've got a whole bunch of drawings, right? In accordance with basic drawing number, yada, 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 yada. So this part prior had tech docs. And remember, tech docs require JCP certification to get access to. So tech docs are basically just blueprints, and then you submit the blueprints to the manufacturer, and the manufacturer makes the material in accordance with the blueprints. That's what tech docs are. Now, if you notice, these are multiple drawing numbers. And I'm not going to go too in depth into this right now. We're going to talk a lot about this in boot camp, but these are multiple drawing numbers dated a whole bunch of different years, right? Years and days, right? The best way to make sure that you're all gravy, right? And I learned this very, very early on is just look at the most recent revision, like the most recent drawing number, and then just ask, is the material made in compliance with this drawing number, right? If the material is made in compliance with the most recent drawing number, then it's going to be in compliance with all the other ones like 80% of the time. It's a rule of thumb. It's a rule of thumb. And I'll explain why in boot camp, but it could be like I could talk about that probably for like an hour. So typically, if you ask if the material is made in accordance with the latest drawing and they say yes, you're typically going to be all good. Then we come down here, right? 6150 is the FSC code. Quantity is 166 units, bidded at 456 bucks. Solid contract, 75K. I'm happy with it. So again, this gives you the item number, right? And this is the CLIN. It doesn't say it here, but this is the CLIN. CLIN is contract line item number, and this is where you come down and you can see it, right? So sometimes there's going to be multiple line items per contract, right? So if that's the case, then it's going to be CLIN 001 because line item 001 of that contract. Then CLIN 002, line item 002 of that contract. Then you've got pricing terms, so it's a firm fixed price contract, so it's not going to change. Then you have quantity variance, which we'll talk more about this in boot camp, but this is really only applicable when you start dealing with stuff that's like in excess of, for us at Two Lines Aerospace, it's 1,000 units. Anything in excess of 1,000 individual units, then you want to start giving yourself a quantity variance protection. But if you're a one-man show or it's you and maybe like one other person, quantity variance comes into play anytime you get to like 500 units or more, right? Then here again, it tells you the inspection point origin, acceptance point origin, and then when it needs to be delivered, right? So this is the delivery date. So if you guys remember, it was 275 days at date of order, meaning we had 275 days, or we have 275 days to ship this material to DLA from the date that the order was placed, which was June 25th, 2024. So this is our nice little date here, 275 days, March 27th, 2025. Boom. And then place of inspection for supplies. So this is where you get into the higher level stuff, right? So the material we don't make stuff at Two Lines Aerospace. We're not a manufacturer. We don't hold inventory. But once you start to have good relationships with companies, right? With manufacturers and distributors, you can be like, hey, are you guys willing to do the inspection? If we handle the packaging, are you guys gonna be, willing to do the inspection on our behalf, right? So for the supplies, DCMA is gonna go there to conduct the inspection, right? CDM Electronics, which is the manufacturer, and then once it comes to us and we package it, all we have to do is make sure that we package it in accordance with, everything that the contract says, which is all this stuff down here. And they're only going to grade us based off of our packaging, because before the material even gets to us, we already told DLA, you guys got to go handle the inspection over there with the manufacturer, right? So by the time it gets to us, we already know that it was sorted out in terms of the inspection, right? So you can have companies do the inspection for the supplies, meaning like the actual material, the products that you're selling, and the packaging as well. We just have a packaging team and we have a warehouse, so we're like, fuck it, we'll do it because we don't want to pay somebody to do our packaging. But you can split it up. You can do one or the other. You can do the inspection for the supplies yourself and then send it to Richard or Adrian to do the packaging, or vice versa kind of thing. And then here are the administration offices. So basically these are the two people that are going to be doing I said two people, two DCMA offices that are going to be conducting these inspections, because it's two separate inspections, right? CDM Electronics is going to get inspected by the Mid-Atlantic DCMA office, and then Two Lines Aerospace, we're going to get inspected by the DCMA Southeast office. And then here we've got our packaging requirements, and then palletization shall be in accordance with RP001. RP001 is just a requirement stating that you have to be in compliance with all the packaging requirements for the procurement or the contract itself. Now, palletization requirements, I believe, or I know for a fact it's anything in excess of 599 pounds, so 600 pounds and above, yes. And there is a weight and dimensions requirement. I just don't remember it off the top of my head, but you can look it up. And then here you have the parcel post address and the shipping address. Most of the time, these are going to be the same. Sometimes they're going to be different. In the event that they're different, just go ahead, print out your shipping label from VSM, and then it's going to tell you which one of these two, whether it be the freight shipping address or the parcel post address, that you're going to ship the material to actually, right? And then you can, calculate your shipping based off of, if it was me, and I needed to calculate my shipping, I would do two estimates in the FedEx shipping calculator if the parcel post address and the freight shipping address are different. But usually it's always going to be based off the freight shipping address. And I would take the estimate that I get from plugging in the freight shipping address and then add that to my markup for shipping. And then, yeah, all this stuff is not applicable. So that is running through all of a contract. So I hope that helped clear up some of the differences between what a contract and a solicitation looks like for you guys. And I hope that was like a good exercise for you guys to see kind of some of the stuff that's included in contracts on the back end that could change from what's published in the solicitation. Do any of you guys have any questions? Questions, comments, concerns before we sign off for the rest of the evening? Jordan says, thank you. Thank you, Jordan. Thank you for attending. Anything else? It's 1938. I'm gonna wait 2 minutes. I'm gonna wait 2 minutes before I end the call if anybody has any questions. Wes says, you guys are the real deal. Checked out the cage code. You thought I was capping, dude? Like, did you think I would just get up here and I'm like making this stuff up? Like, I try my best to be pretty transparent and yeah, I always say, and I sometimes people don't agree with me when I say this, but I'm like, listen, if you haven't done at least $1 million in the game, I don't think you're qualified to teach it. Um, I've done more than 3x that myself just as a bidder, and then us as a company um will do, I'm not gonna say the exact number, but 8 figures this year. So all the information that I'm giving you is from stuff that I've either experienced myself as a bidder um or seen like, from clients. Um Someone says, I just want to be clear, anything we bid on, we will package and send, meaning that there will be no products that come from the vendor straight to DLA. Sometimes it can happen, but I would say only like 20% of the time that's gonna happen. In the beginning, it's gonna be very rare because you basically are going to be relying on the vendor being in compliance with all of the military standard packaging and labeling requirements, right? So if this is a commercial vendor, like some mom and pop shop that has no idea, and then you're like, hey, can you guys ship this to the government? They might be like, yeah, sure, we'll gladly ship it to you. And then, or we'll gladly ship it for you. And then it gets to DLA and DLA is like, what the hell? Like, this is not what we were looking for. So it's typically going to come later on in your journey after you've established relationships with people who either have experience with military standard packaging or you've been doing a lot of business with somebody and then you're like, yeah, I can teach you how to do military standard packaging like on my behalf, right? After you've done, a couple contracts with them. Other companies that have the service. Yeah, two lines or I said two lines airspace. Um yeah, we put you in touch with two different companies. Richard at 305 Air Supplies, or Adrian at his company. I forget what Adrian's company's name is, honestly. But Adrian's been doing packaging for like 5 years, and Richard, he does his packaging. He's been doing packaging and having a packaging business for probably like over a year now. So, oh, sweet. Okay, that was Ivan. I saw a different name, so I wasn't sure. Any other questions, comments, concerns for me? Can the inspection site be different than your business address? Yeah, so we literally actually just talked about that. Yeah, so this is our business address. And they're inspecting us only for the packaging here. And then this is the material inspection, and that's being done in New Jersey. We're in Florida. So it can be done. We'll talk about like how to submit that and how to bid that in boot camp.
So there you have it, guys. I hope you found this video as useful as the students on the coaching call. Now, if you are serious about growing your business and you want to consistently and reliably win contracts with the DLA, then now is the time to take action. If you want the same process used to go from 0 to 50 million in sales, and you want the support from the best in the business, then click the link in the description below to book a call with the team. Google our cage code 8 Bravo Papa Echo 2. Men lie, women lie, numbers don't. Not only am I looking forward to your success, but I'm absolutely sure of it. Let's go print those dollars.